Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm your host, Sam Fain, and I am joined once again by JJ Lendl. JJ, thanks so much. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be back. Talk about Quantum Leap as we reach not just the penultimate, but the ultimate episode because they're airing on the same night.
That's right.
Yes, it's too
Yeah,
much.
I mean, it's a lot, and it's funny because I will say this, and I don't feel like I'm speaking too much out of turn by saying so, but based off of some of the conversations I've had, there is a little bit of it's like a bittersweet moment. On one hand, ooh, this is cool. We're getting to air these two episodes back to back. On the other hand, there's this notion of like they weren't necessarily designed that way, and there's a little bit of kind of are we losing that opportunity for oh my god, what's going to happen
Right.
next
For
by
the
not
water
having
cooler talk.
212 and
Yeah.
then 213. Yeah. Now here's something interesting that I will throw out there for those that are interested in any kind of stuff like this. It does not appear that we are going to get a screener for the finale episode 213. We will, however, I believe, get a screener for 212 as the world burns. um so in a way, like, we're actually going to have that opportunity to see 212 and then have
Right.
to wait to see 213.
Right.
And it's strange because it's kind of exciting. And I had even mentioned to someone that I was speaking to, that even had we gotten both of the episodes as screeners at the same time, which I think was initially a possibility had they been able to finish 213 in time. My plan was to watch 212 and then maybe wait a day and watch 213 after.
Mm,
And part of that was not only just to get that experience like I'm talking about, but part of it was also because I wanted to be able to sit with 212, give it its due, kind of take my notes, that sort of thing, and then do 213, as opposed to watching them both and kind of interpreting them in that way, just kind of like, as a commentator on the show or whatever. But it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be a phenomenal event for a lot of reasons, and I think it's just going to be, Quantum Leap the movie in a lot of ways, and I think it's going to be a hell of a ride. So I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but before we do, it's been a couple of weeks since you and I had a chance to chat. You were doing your thing down in Florida with the House of the Mouse and all that.
yes.
So I would love to get your thoughts on The Family Treasure and The Outsider. But before I even do that, I suppose, yeah, tell folks what you were up to. I know we talked a little bit about it last time around, but how did it go? Did you have a
Oh
good
yeah.
time?
Yeah. It was good. So I was down in Florida for about a week, doing a signing event for the Epcot International Festival of the Arts, which they have at Disney World every January, February. It's like a 6 week event. So I was down there signing prints, some of my Star Wars artwork, Indiana Jones, and Marvel Studios. And it went well. Had tremendous crowds, especially Friday and Saturday. So I was very tired. And I was able to bring my family down, my wife Skylar and my little 3 year old Rosie. And we had a wonderful time. We did uh, we did a lot of stuff at the resort. They take care of us down there. They put us up at one of the Disney World resorts, and so we were hanging out in the pool with Rosie, and we were at the Animal Kingdom Lodge this year. So we had, Rosie could see giraffes out on the balcony, and so that was fun. And then,
Yeah.
while I was doing my signing, they were just napping, which is nice. It's nice for them.
Right.
But yeah, it was a great trip. This is my 6th year doing it, so hopefully I'll be back around this time next year. And we, yeah, I the Ryan, who oversees the event for my publisher Acme, is a great guy, and it's great catching up with him while I'm down there because it's really one of the only times I get to see him during the year in person. But yeah, it was good. But it's hard because you've got a toddler, and her bedtime's at like 8 at the latest, and so you're in the hotel room at 8 p.m. and we have her like in a little pack and play in the
Hmm.
corner, and Skylar found this. Basically, it's like a tent that you can put over a pack and play that can, it's like
That's
semi
awesome, actually.
semi dark, and so it's like a little. We were like, I don't know how Rose is going to feel about this. We're like enclosing her into this crib, and meanwhile, she was just like, she loved it. She was like,
Yeah.
"Can you zip me in?" It's like, yes, FCS will zip
Aw.
you in, and she fell asleep. So, which is very quiet nights in the hotel room, and but which was fine because we were exhausted because it
Yeah.
between travel and then just being at Disney and then being with a 3-year-old all day, it can be
Right.
pretty tiresome. But it was a great trip. Thanks for asking, Sam. But I'm glad to be back, and I had to sort of put projects on hold. I had my travel set up for drawing and for doing digital stuff, but it's never the same. And you're in the hotel room and you're just like exhausted. So I started to
Yeah.
work on a family treasure poster down there, and I came up with a concept. When it came to execution, I was like, I gotta wait till I get back. Um, so which was fine. I'm glad that I did.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it turned out well. I imagine anyone who's watching right now has already had the chance to see it. But if you haven't, head over to JJ's Instagram or the Fates Wide Wheel Instagram or Twitter or any of the socials, and you'll be able to find it pretty easily. But I would love to get your thoughts on the episode itself.
Yeah.
I feel like it was it's funny because in a way I want to say it was a momentous episode, right? Because it felt that way, but so far in a way almost all of them since coming back from break have felt like momentous episodes,
Yes.
because there's just so much big stuff happening. It's like everything that was set up in those first 8, the dominoes are beginning to fall in some really really interesting ways, and we're getting some great storytelling to go along with it. So yeah, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on the family treasure. I mean, I loved it, and it certainly it meant something to me even beyond being a good Quantum Leap episode. So yeah, what'd you think?
Yeah, and I think I don't think that you're alone there. I think that uh, well, one from like a Quantum Leap perspective, uh, I I thought it was great, and I thought it it's an episode that really drew out 3-dimensional characters and had a sense of adventure and a sense of fun, but also a sense of stakes. And I'm just, I'm constantly impressed, especially this season, with the production of the show, and how they've taken us to these different places and how they're able to, rally all their resources to create these really unique looks, and just the pacing I thought was really great in the episode too. And the
Yeah,
other thing is the converging of the past and the present storylines happening more and more. And in this case, it was basically Addison, who is she's experiencing the leap with Ben, and we are watching sort of in the background her changing, or at least her maybe self actualizing a little bit more about what's going on in her head, what's going on in her heart. And, watching that play out during the leap, I thought was really effective rather than constantly cutting back to the, because I think that the show has had to figure out, because there's more emphasis on the project stuff, how can you tell both of these stories at the same time and not feel like one of them is getting, you know, shorted. And I thought that this episode was really effective in doing that because you had basically a character turn happening in the past with Addison in the present, if that makes any sense. Um,
absolutely.
so I really like that. I thought that was very clever. Um, and then in terms of just sort of like the leap itself, and you and I were talking. I didn't know anything about this episode going in, and you know, you had told me about the casting, and prior to it, because I think that they had put out for I don't know if it was an open audition or what, um, for the uh, the non-binary character. And you and I were talking, and I was like, I wonder if they're if they're going to be in the present or if they're going to be in the past. And because you know everything, Sam,
Well,
you you
I don't know
you,
about that, but
you knew that they were going to be in the past, and I just think that it was an episode that really spoke to something that's going on today and a misconception that is happening today, in that non-binary is not a new thing. It's not something that millennials or Gen Z just came up with
right.
to make older generations feel like they don't know what's going on in the world. As I think a lot of people conceive of it, at least on some corners of the internet. But you know, to touch on that subject matter in the way that they did on network television in prime time is really cool. And the fact that they're able to do it in a way where um, it's part of the episode, but the episode is not entirely about it. It's weaved into the story, and I thought that was really well done too. It didn't feel like an after school special or anything like that. Because
Yeah.
we're not, it's not the episode where we're gonna talk about this thing. It's part of the story. It's part of the story because it's part of the character that we've created, and it's part of the DNA of these relationships. And watching the relationships between the siblings sort of start where they did, in a place where there was no understanding, that there was no empathy, and to see this adventure take place that brought them together, over the course of 40 minutes, was really well executed. So yeah, I will sing the episode's praises up and down. I really enjoyed it. And I think that um, the like you said, since the return from the hiatus, it's just been bang, bang, bang. Um,
Yeah.
and it makes me sad that we're going to be done this week.
I
Just feel
know.
like we're dealing with a writer's room and a crew and a cast that is firing on all cylinders, doing some of the best work that the show has done in its short span. And I just hope we don't have to wait a long time before we get some more chapters in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that, just to go back to the after school special thing, one of the reasons why I think that was so easily avoided was just the sheer joy with which the moment was approached.
Oh,
That
yes,
while
absolutely.
there were stakes there, while it was difficult, while there was an obstacle there, it was not, it was not this heart-wrenching moment. Instead, it was this beautiful discovery, and it was just really, really lovely. And I just appreciated so much about it. And, I mean, I talked about that in the review. I talked about in my interview with Shakina, the fact that there was this, this wonderful blending of the timelines, and seeing
Yes,
Ian's
yes.
response to everything that was happening,
Hmm.
and the way that Ben was informing the situation with, his kind of present day, or more present day point of view and perspective on everything, and the way that Dean and Sarah, kind of taking this information. And yeah, it was just really lovely. And I appreciated it so much. And I'm glad you mentioned the stuff too about Addison, because I was going to ask you directly about that. And I don't have to ask you that now, because it was such a wonderful episode for Addison, and seeing her growth, and seeing the way that she acted between the lines, where it
Right.
was this opportunity to just see a character growing and evolving before our eyes, without there being any dialogue. And then of course that was followed up on beautifully in The Outsider, which I guess just takes me to my next question. Like, what did you think of The Outsider?
I thought it was one of the show's bests,
Yeah.
on every level. And, I, you know, there's, you know, when you revive a show um, that has been off the air for, 30 years, um, it's sort of like it's a ship of Theseus situation. Like, if so many parts of the show has changed, is it actually the show? And I think this was an episode that really showed that this is the same show. It's updated. It's got a new wardrobe. It's got it's got a lot of new elements to it. But at the heart of the show, it's the same. And this is, I've had a chance to rewatch some classic QL episodes, and this just fell so well into what that era of Quantum Leap did best. Um, and at the same time is able to do this, the revival version of this show where they're integrating the present day timelines and really making the project part of the story. It did that, probably better than it ever has as well. So I thought Outsiders, if it's not my favorite of the season so far, it's definitely, up there.
Yeah.
Which again, it's like, man, they're really hitting a stride here, and we're we're
Right.
we're we're hitting the end of the season. So
Yeah.
um,
It's clearly, I mean, it's clearly building to a crescendo,
yes.
and so many of these storylines are converging in remarkable ways. And the thing that I've said multiple times, and I'll, continue to beat this horse. I would never beat a horse.
You heard it here,
But
folks.
yeah,
Sam is
but
beating horses.
the way that we've gotten such a wonderful character driven narrative for so long, and that it is now feeding into this plot, kind of meta plot narrative that is paying off. It's just so beautiful because the stakes are so high, and the way that these characters have grown and evolved are supporting that overall narrative beautifully. And the ramifications of this storyline and the investment that we have is so much higher because we spent that time early in the season with these very character driven episodes about the stuff that was happening between these human beings, that now, as we get ready to kind of pay attention to all of these dominoes falling in that, the big plot,
Hmm.
it just means even more. And I think that we're just seeing a team that has spent a lot of care in crafting this story from the beginning. And I've said this the past couple of weeks. Going back and rewatching this season from the beginning is going to pay dividends, because it is clear that they knew where they were going, which is remarkable when you really think about it. The
Well, it's
circumstances with
yeah,
which they began the second season, right?
right.
It wasn't like they had months to plan this in advance. It was just that seed that Martin was able to plant, right? With like, there's going to be a 3-year time jump, there's going to be this and that, and the way that like the team and the guidance and the stuff that Dean and the writers room and everyone has kind of just been able to craft is remarkable. And I think that you're right, that the heart of the show, it beats with the same rhythm as the classic series. And the Outsider was a really, really wonderful example of that.
Yeah, to say nothing of the strikes in the middle of the season. Yeah.
Right, which is
Um,
something that Nadine and I talked a little bit about, and how that actually kind of informed some of her what she brought to the role, because she could really easily identify with the idea of like that existential threat from a professional
yeah,
perspective, right? Which is something that Connie clearly dealt with as well, for
right.
very different reasons, obviously. But yeah, so yes, the strike obviously is another huge facet of it all.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, you know, it's network television, which is very different than doing a show on a streamer or, on premium cable, where, they tend to assemble their writers room, get all the scripts together and written and well polished, and then start then start shooting. This is week to week, and for them to be able to do this kind of world building and, like you said, weaving in all of these story points so cohesively on that kind of breakneck schedule, where you're writing to live, you're writing week to week, is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, all the praise for the crew, all the praise for the cast, and I cannot wait for the next two to
Yeah.
air. And you were saying, like, if we would get both of the screeners, like, you would wait a day, and I'm like, well, I will take the opposite stance of that. Not only because I want to see what's happened, but I got to make 2 posters this week.
Right.
Um,
Well,
so
look, let me just say that that was my plan, but as we well
yeah,
know, the best laid plans. So I'm not saying that I would have been able to actually execute it, but that
but
was
I
my
like
plan.
the idea. I like the idea. But for me, from a practical perspective,
Right.
you know, I if I the more episodes that I can watch in advance, and sometimes I'll make these without seeing anything. A lot of the posters that I've made for the show are just based on trailers or word of mouth or things like that,
Right.
or publicity photos. But in an effort not wanting to repeat oneself, having more episodes in the can so that you can sort of differentiate posters is nice, but it's not
Yeah.
something that I get to do for a show that is currently airing. So being able to do that is great, but this will not happen this week. I'm
Right. Right.
not going to have that
Well,
advantage.
let's let's dive into some theorizing, because it was one of the things I
Okay.
loved the last time that we chatted during Off the Cuff. We got to kind of ask some questions, and not, this isn't necessarily so much a space of like, this is what we think is going to happen and it better or else. This is more
This
just
is
sort
what
of
will
like, right, right, right. This is more just an opportunity to kind of say like, what if this, or I wonder this or that. And I think that the show is in such a wonderful place because we get to do that. It
Yes.
does not, like, I don't feel frustrated by anything. This isn't like late season 4 or early season 5 of like Lost or something, where I'm just sort of like banging my head against the wall, like, do they know what's happening? This is more a case of just sort of like, there's so much possibility here,
Yeah.
and there's so many opportunities, I think, to speculate on what may be. So the
Yes.
first question that I will throw out to you um is, what are your thoughts on Gideon?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, um, James Frayne, the actor, I like a lot, and Star Trek fans will know James Frayne from uh, his role as Sarek in the new Star Trek shows, and he debuted in Discovery. So I think he's a great actor.
Yeah.
Um, what we've seen of him so far has not really given us much to go on in terms of his motivations. We know that he's very invested in, you know, the project, um, and we know that he has got a lot of connections. The fact that he can just walk into a top secret, uh, you know, military project and basically start bossing people around um, says a lot. I would
Yeah.
imagine about the kind of power that this person wields. Um, I think that he's very menacing, but I wonder if he has more of a connection to the story than we are aware of at this point. Because when you're dealing with time travel, who knows? And I think about Martinez from the first season, where here's this character that they encountered, to go to his house, and he's just this guy, and it's very clear that he has absolutely no idea what they were talking about. And ultimately, it's because that that Martinez didn't know, because the Martinez that they end up dealing with is a future version of him. And so I'm wondering if we're going to encounter something not time travel necessarily, but that Gideon is perhaps more in the know about what's going on at Project Quantum Leap than one would assume,
Yeah.
um, versus Martinez, who was genuinely naive about what was happening when they encountered him in the present. Um, the question is like, what is his motivation here? We just don't know that. Why is he invested? What does he want? What does, what data does he want? And, at this point, it really could be anything. Like, if you're a fan of the classic series, you can start making, connections with, the during the first season. I know a lot of the fans of the classic series were thinking about the Evil Leaper stuff, and are we going to encounter Lothos or that rogue project or anything? And you could say the same thing now. It's like, is this
Sure.
some plan to create some alternate time travel project? I don't know. What do you think, Sam? Do you have a pet theory in mind?
I
Like,
do.
okay,
I do. And I mentioned this during my review. I feel like and I could be completely wrong, but I feel like I want to be a little careful with my theories for the following reasons. One, you know, listeners of the show know that I communicate with people who work on the show.
yeah,
And I don't want people to think that anything I say is a spoiler. And I don't want, if something I say does turn out to be true, I don't want people to think that I'm just regurgitating something I've heard, because the amazing thing is at this particular point in time, I am incredibly in the dark about what's coming, with two small exceptions, and they are very small. And I will be glad to elaborate on them once the finale is aired. But here's what I will say: I don't think that Gideon is exactly who he says he is.
okay,
Um, I think that we are going to find out, because here's the thing. At the end of The Outsider, there was a moment where I was like, wait, is that all that we're going to get from Gideon? Because it almost feels like the story is resolved. And it's like, well, surely that can't be it, because you don't bring somebody like James Frain in just to do like two short scenes and then they're done, right?
right, right,
So it's like, so no, he's got to come back. And that even more reinforced the idea that I feel like, yeah, Gideon is not who he says he is.
yeah,
And that you are absolutely right that he has a deeper connection to everything that is happening with Project Quantum Leap, and potentially with Ben, um, and perhaps even Hannah, than what we're seeing, because I do think that he is connected to Hannah. I think that that is the impetus, and I will just leave it at that. I think people
okay,
will be able to draw their own conclusions based off of my thought, but I will say that literally as soon as I saw Gideon, the introduction of the character, that I sent a message to somebody who works on the show with my theory. And if my theory proves to be true, then they will be able to testify to the
okay.
fact that I threw it out there.
This is like, I'm going to write this on this piece
Yeah,
of paper and seal it in this envelope, and I will open it after the episode airs.
right. And they are going to be on the show after the finale, so we'll be
Okay,
able to actually ask them. But
so you can either, you can take a bow or you can eat crow. And they can be like,
yeah, exactly.
"What is
I don't, I don't, yeah, I don't take bows. I don't
Sam?
like,
You
I
don't
don't
write
like victory
television,
laps.
okay? You don't know
Yeah,
what you're doing."
exactly. Yeah. You don't
But
write
I mean, that
television,
makes
and
sense
we're
to me.
thankful.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense to me, because another interesting thing about these past two episodes that there has been, well, there's no Hannah
Yeah.
on screen. There has been a little bit of mention, and of course we've learned that Ben's attempt to save the life of her husband has failed, um, and there seems to be some temporal need for this guy to kick the bucket not long after Ben encountered him in 1970. And so, we didn't get a lot of movement on that storyline in these last two episodes, which I think really speaks to the quality of those two episodes, where I didn't feel,
Hmm.
shortchanged by that, because there was so much other incredible stuff going on. Um, but, maybe we are getting more from that story. We just
Right.
don't realize it yet. So, yeah, I guess we'll
Well,
see.
and I think that that's definitely part of the reason why I think it'll be so fascinating to rewatch this season as a whole, is because I think that there are things that we are not picking up on. There's things that we are missing. And I think that that's intentional, because I don't think that we're going to be able, like, we don't have the cipher yet. You know, we're not
Right.
going to have the cipher until we see the finale. And then it's going to be like, oh, and, you know, upon rewatch, there'll be a lot more we can pick up on.
Right.
So yeah, here's something else that I'll throw out there, and I'd love to hear your response to. We've gotten a lot of, well, not a lot, but we've had discussion and mention of things like sacrifice and fate and death and, you know, and grief. It has really been a running theme throughout the season. And it is in stark contrast to the, also the running theme of the infinite capacity of love.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts to make me wonder, you know, I mean, how intertwined is all of this, right? You know, is sacrifice the highest form of love? Is, you know, does death and grief, you know, compel us to exhibit that love even more and more freely? And are we fated not only as human beings to die, but also fated to love? And seeing the way that this is all played out so far, it has me thinking more than ever that not everyone makes it out of this season alive. And I'm going to make a bold statement.
Okay.
I think Hannah dies in As the World Burns.
Is that just based on the title of the episode? Because I assumed that it was going to be a Simpsons crossover and that Mr. Burns was going to be the villain. Did you not? I assumed it's going to be one of those like, oh yeah, it's like partly animated and they're like talking with animated characters.
I mean, it would fulfill a lifelong dream, because let's face it, they wanted to do an animated Quantum Leap back in the day. So now 30 years later, like, it would make a lot of sense.
Ben leaps into Homer. He's got to stop a meltdown at the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
So there's the double meaning there, as the world burns.
Absolutely. There it is.
Okay. Yes.
What a beautiful shape.
I love it. Writer's room, call me if you need lose your jobs en masse. No, that's a bold statement. You said a lot of very eloquent things about love and sacrifice, and it reminds me that we've been talking a lot about, you know, this Quantum Leap revival, whatever you want to call what's on the air right now, season 7 of Quantum Leap, season 2 of the revival. There's a major difference between where our current story starts and where Sam Beckett's story starts. Sam Beckett left because there was a funding issue at Project Quantum Leap, and he needed to prove his theories before they pulled the plug. The revival series is completely based on the idea that Ben loved Addison so much that he was willing to sacrifice himself for the possibility to save her life. So everything that you're talking about is already built into the DNA of the show's premise. And, you know, that premise has not been resolved. You know, Ben never returned home like he was supposed to at the end of the first season. And as we've seen over these last couple of weeks, Addison is still dealing with the blowback and the trauma of that, because she has this man that she loves who has made the ultimate sacrifice because of that love. And then she thought he really did make the ultimate sacrifice. As she said, you know, you died. Like, for all intents and purposes, you died. I had to bury you. And then you came back. And she clearly is still coming to terms with her feelings about that and her feelings about Ben. And so I don't think that the show can be about anything else, frankly. I think they're just taking this initial theme and they're layering it and layering it and layering it. And it's just coming up left and right because the entire crux of the show is about sacrificing yourself for a greater love. And yeah, I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going
Yeah.
to see. I don't know that we're going to see it in the form of necessarily death or something happening with Hannah, but I think we're definitely going to see some more sacrifice here. We just saw the last moments of the last episode. Magic sacrifices himself
Yep.
to save his team from being
Yeah.
dismissed, and
Yeah.
we have to live with the repercussions of that. What's going to happen with that? Are we watching, a change in the status quo of this show? Is Ernie Hudson going to be back? Or is this the lead up to a different kind of shakeup? We don't know.
Yeah. I yeah, I think here's what I'll say. I don't think Ernie's going anywhere.
Okay.
I don't. I actually don't think. I think that that's kind of a bit of a red herring, if you will.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
And I don't. I hate to dismiss it that way because it has an impact. It definitely carries weight, right? Like there's definitely in that moment, and especially the way that I think Ernie and Narissa played the scene. It felt very impactful. But I definitely don't think that that's like the end game.
If it is, there's a lot of things setting it up over the course of the season. We've got him, coming to terms with his alcoholism. We've got him finding this new romance and this new partner in Beth. So
Yeah.
we've got all these raw parts of someone who's kind of getting to the point where he's like, maybe it's time for me to hang it up and, hand the reins over to somebody else. But again, that could all just be a big misdirect. We don't know.
Yeah. I do think I do think that we are going to see Beth again
Okay.
before the season's over. And part of the
And
reason
that
I
feels
think
right.
that,
Yeah.
and part of the reason I think that is because there was a post on Instagram from one of the actors on the Desperate Housewives street, which is where Beth's house is. That's where they filmed Beth's
Oh,
house.
okay.
Now it could
They could
very
have
well
just been
be
doing the Desperate Housewives tour,
right, or it could very well be, that they're using another one of the houses, or something like that. It might not necessarily. I mean,
Right.
look, no, I'm not gonna lie. I literally looked up the house. It's the exact same house. I know that it's the house. So all I'm saying is there will at least
You know
be a
everything.
scene at Beth's house. I did the detective work.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the actors did post that. So I think that the very least we're going to get a scene at Beth's house, which it would make sense that Beth would be
Okay.
there, but maybe not. You never know. Like maybe it is just a scene with Magic, right?
And you think
And Beth's out.
they didn't mean to reveal that when they posted it. They
I
didn't
don't.
it wasn't like, Beth, you're not ready for next week. As the
Right.
as
No, it wasn't. It was
okay.
not. It definitely was not that. It was more just kind of like, it was more just kind of like, this is where I am, right now.
Okay.
And I was able to kind of put two and two together. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, maybe we won't actually see Beth, but maybe we'll just get a scene at the house. But I have a feeling that we'll see Beth again. It would make a lot of sense because basically exactly what you just said, right? Like it would make a lot of sense if we did see Magic leaving the project, because
Yeah.
there are these things that have set that up in a way. But I just to contrast that for a minute, I do think that there's actually also this element of like, maybe the opposite is also true, that he is the one that's supposed to be at the head of that ship, and that he is the one that's supposed to remain in that position, and that
Yeah.
part of the reason why he can now do that job and function in that job even better than before is because he is dealing with his alcoholism, and he is in this new relationship, and he is trying to find ways to to balance both or whatever, right? And maybe we also
Yeah.
get to see kind of a transition, right? Maybe he does hand off the reins a little bit to somebody like Jen, or Addison or whatever. Although I've got other ideas about Addison. I think Addison, my thought, and I could be completely off the mark on this one, my thought is that Addison gets in the accelerator in the finale.
Just to clean it out, just in case.
Yeah. I think she wants to light some candles,
Right.
so when Ben returns, there's like, no, I mean, I think she
Transcendental
fires
meditation.
it up. I think she
I
fires it
mean,
up
that
without saying.
when I remember when season 1 ended and they had that very brief trailer for season 2, and we see Addison in sort of the leap pajamas, as I'll call them. And that was kind of a
The thermi
misdirect
suit.
because, right, that ended up being from the first episode and a flashback to when
Right.
they were preparing things. But I think people at that point were like, "Oh, she's gonna leap," and that didn't happen.
But is it a breadcrumb? Is it a
Maybe,
breadcrumb?
yeah.
Because
Again, if it is, it's genius.
right,
Um,
and
it's
think
like,
about the line that she had in The
killing Spock
Outsider.
at the beginning of Star Trek 2
Yes.
as a simulator, and then really killing him at the
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
which is hilarious because, like, all right, this is a quick digression, and we're going to get back at it because we're going to wrap up soon. But the funny thing is that originally, fans got wind of Spock's death
I
in
know,
Wrath of
right?
Khan, and they went ape over it. And then they originally, because the plan was to kill him off in the first like third of the movie,
Yes,
and so
right.
when he died at the very beginning, like, of course there was just sort of like, and then naturally we find out it's a simulation, and then they kill him in the end. But yeah, so I do think that that's a possibility also, just off of the fact that we've been reminded as recently as The Outsider that she was the one that was supposed to leap.
Right.
She was
Yes.
the one that was supposed to
Right.
leap. So
Because she has all this whole skill set that she was going to bring to the table.
right.
And and the fact that Ben was supposed to be the observer as well is a whole other dimension. I'm going to take a second. I'm going to plug a book. If you're a fan of Star Trek 2, this came out last year.
Ooh.
Have you read this? Have you checked this out, Sam?
No, I've not.
Making of the classic film. I have read everything there is to read about the making of Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan over my lifetime, and there's stuff in this book that I did not know about.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. Do you know about the Genesis baby?
No.
You don't know about the Genesis baby because I didn't know about the Genesis baby. And this isn't like a script thing. Like, they shot scenes where Khan had a baby. And
what?
yes, and like they actually shot, the scene where the Genesis torpedo is on the transporter pad. They've got the baby crawling around the torpedo.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Part of the reason why it wasn't in the movie is because they couldn't get the child actor to cooperate.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
So they just got that storyline. So check it. That's just one little. That's one little inkling from that book, the Wrath of Khan, the making of the classic movie.
Oh my
if you want to check that
gosh.
out. I'm not getting any money for that, but
so here's something that I'll throw out there real quick, kind of in conjunction with all of this. But like, kind of going along a little bit with fate and some of the other stuff I was mentioning before. What about the idea too that there are supposed to be these rules to time travel into Project Quantum Leap, right? There were rules that Sam wasn't supposed to break. And
sure.
and eventually, like, technically speaking, he broke them. He broke
every
them
single
multiple
one. Well,
times.
he breaks a cardinal rule in the second episode of the show.
Exactly.
When he changes his own history. And and that, the repercussions of that weren't revealed until the beginning of the 4th season of the show.
Yeah.
And again, it was a different era, when it comes to mythology aspect of the original Quantum Leap. I mean, there wasn't a ton. It was all very character based. In the last couple of seasons, they started to break their own rules that they had set for the show itself. But the entire premise of the show was based on the idea that Ben wanted to change his personal history. He wanted to change what he knew was going to happen to Addison.
Which, here's the thing, even though it's never explicitly stated, and this is purely fan theory, and I understand that it's headcanon and it is not meant to be, taken as a fact at all, and I don't mean for it to be. But okay. I've always held the theory that Sam leaps with the sole intention of saving his brother. That when he steps in there, it is not motivated by they're going to pull my funding. I mean, I think it is. Yes, it is motivated by that, in so much as, if I don't do this now, I'll never save Tom. And so he gets into the accelerator because he thinks it's his only chance to do so. And I think that, like you said, with mythology and shows being different at the time, I think the entirety of season 2, go back and watch season 2 of the original Quantum Leap. It's remarkable how much everything is tied to to that very effort, saving Tom. Everything is tied, whether it's the repeated mentions of the Vietnam War, the number of times that Sam brushes up against something like that, the number of mentions of Tom, the number of mentions of death and saving the ones you love. I mean, you just look back on it, like, whether it's intentional or not, it's pretty remarkable how that theme plays out over the course of season 2 and feeds directly into MIA, into the Leap Home Part 1 and Part 2.
Yeah.
And it, I mean, yeah, it's not the type of thing that you would expect of a show in 1990, quite frankly.
Right.
1990, 91. And so or 89, 90 rather. And so I think that it's yeah, to me, there definitely feels intent there. But yeah, the amount of time that Sam broke the rules right up until Mirror Image, right? When he leaps in to save Beth and Al's marriage, right?
Yeah.
And then again, as you mentioned, the entirety of the revival has been based around breaking these rules, you know, whether it's Ben leaping to save Addison, Ian leaping to warn Ben to save Addison. I mean, that's the other thing too, when you really think about it. You know, Ian is actually the one that kicks all of this off.
Absolutely.
And what a remarkable journey that character has had. And
Yes.
and the fact that they, in this latest episode, stand up, you know, to the face of the man, if you will, and say, I am not sorry for a thing that I have done. I did it all for the right reasons. And they're the only one that didn't give up, right? They didn't move on. They didn't give up. And so much of what has happened, it feels like, has been set into motion by the very fact that they leapt back to tell Ben, and Ben then took this action, right? And it was facilitated by Janice Calavici, and Janice is a product of a marriage, of a union that never existed. Yeah. And so many of these elements that we're seeing have got me thinking, like, does any of this have to be undone for things to be set right? Specifically, is Ben going to basically have to erase his entire relationship with Hannah in order to protect her? You know what I mean? In order to protect the people he loves, in order to protect Addison, protect the project, protect all the work that's been done. So it is so wide open, and there's so many things. And there's also this other thought that popped into my head as we were talking on our behind the scene video that we recorded right before this. Al kept a secret, and granted, as you mentioned earlier, the mythology was very different, and the way that shows handled this was very different. So we didn't know, the writers probably didn't know, nobody knew until they wrote The Leap Back that this was the case.
Right.
But in theory, Al kept a very big secret from Sam.
Secret. Yes.
For quite a long time.
Yes.
And I've started to wonder, is there still a secret being kept from Ben, specifically by Addison, that we are not privy to and will not be privy to until the finale? Is there a big secret, a big reveal coming that once we hear it, again, we will be able to trace it back and be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense?
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I don't know, because it feels like Ben is not having the same memory issues that...
It's a great point.
That Sam did, and since the beginning of the season, whatever they did, even though it didn't result in him coming back home, it has seemed to heal a lot of his, temporal amnesia. So
what a great term for that.
Right. So I don't know if that would be part of it, but certainly there might be information. There's certainly information that Ben is not privy to regarding Hannah and everything that's going on there. But the other dimension of that, talking about all that, and perhaps having to change history to keep the people that he loves safe, like Hannah, something keeps throwing him in front of her, into her path.
Yeah.
And is it this, time, fate, God, accelerator, whatever, noun you want to throw into that? Or is it something else?
Son of a... That is, yeah. And that has me connecting dots to Gideon.
Right.
And making
Gideon,
me
who
wonder...
has had information with the chip since the start of this whole thing.
Could Gideon be influencing Ben's leaps?
Conceivably, right? I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's possible. They can shut the chip down. Can
Right.
they direct where he's going? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know, but I think we're going to find out. And one last thing that I'll note too is that Hannah would not be who she is, where she is, as we have last seen, without Ben's influence.
Right.
She never would have gone to Princeton. She never would have become, this incredible physicist. She never would have worked on the project she's working on. She never would have been building a device for clean energy in, her office with her, her 9-year-old son. You know what I mean? Like,
As far
there's
as we
all
know. As far as
right,
we know.
right. She likely never would have met and married Josh.
Yeah.
Because I guess the question that I would ask is, without Ben's influence, would she have ever left New Mexico?
Right. Or would she still be working in that diner?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. And, this is sort of one of those forever quantum leap questions. When changes to the timeline are made, how are those changes reflected in the present? How are they reflected in the lives and in the minds of the people who work at the project? And, we've gotten sort of an answer for that in Let Them Play.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also gotten other, contradictory answers to that over the years as well. I recently watched A Leap for Lisa, which has a lot of crazy,
mm-hmm.
time travel stuff in it, which is an episode I'm thinking about recently
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the revival.
Same.
I'll leave it at that. But, when the probability of Al getting the gas chamber as a young man gets to 100%, and Roddy McDowell pops onto the scene.
St. John.
Samuel.
God, I just had a flashback.
Right. The your Aunt Tilly. The memory of Al in Sam's mind, Sam, who is back in 1957, begins to fade. Even then, it never ultimately fades out. Make that of that what you will, but there does seem to be somewhat of a domino effect. And so I don't think in the world of Quantum Leap, it's a world where you would have, I'll say, like a Cyberdyne Terminator situation where, Terminators only exist because this Terminator came back in time and left a CPU chip for the people that made the Terminators to find. And then, I don't know if there can be a closed loop history in Quantum Leap. All signs point to probably not. But I will remind people of this. It is a TV show.
Yes.
So whatever works, try not to think too hard about it.
there are not many television shows, period, but certainly, not at the time the original Quantum Leap was airing, that stuck to their own internal history or mechanisms or rules.
Absolutely.
Things would change to facilitate the story. It's one of the reasons why when you hear the naysayers about something happening in Star Trek that doesn't line up with something that happened previously, it's like, have you seen the first season of the original series? Like, do you realize the Federation didn't even exist? There was no Federation, there was no Starfleet.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that yeah, that consistency is not necessarily, but here's the other thing that I will say. I know the passion, I know the knowledge, the love, the fidelity that so many of the people working on the revival have for the classic series.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had very recent conversations with people where they have name checked specific episodes. And clearly, I mean, having Deborah in the room is also pretty fantastic
that
too.
Helps, right?
Right. Yeah. To have that connective tissue. So I think whatever happens, I do think that there is going to be something classic about the finale. And no, I don't think it's Scott Bakula. So that's not what this is about.
2 Scott Bakula's.
Yes, exactly. What's better than one Scott Bakula? But no, I do think that there are going to be some moments that are incredibly, indelibly tied to the classic series in the finale.
I'd love that. I'm excited. I
Yeah.
want to see more. I want to see more of that. So whether
Yeah.
it's in the finale or whenever we get the green light for season 3 of this
Right.
wonderful show.
Look, I'll just say I will say this. I will say this. I have it on the highest of authorities, and we just mentioned her name a second ago, that the finale is an episode that is well regarded by Deborah. So
Okay.
so if anyone wants to know, that is definitely a truth. And she said that herself. So I
Yeah,
am
but is
really looking
Deborah as
forward.
big of a fan of the show as random people on the internet?
That's
Let's
a
be
good
honest.
point. I don't
She is
know.
invested
Right? Does
in the
she? Yeah. Does
show
she
as
care
someone who
as
watched
much?
it when they were 11. Um,
No. Any other thoughts, JJ, that you want to add before we get out of here?
um, it's just I wish the season were longer.
Sure.
Um, I
I'll just throw in there real quick. I want to say for people that have asked that question, because I see that question get brought up a lot about why isn't it 18 episodes like last season. The thing you have to understand is the very frank reason of why it's not 18 episodes is simply because of the strike. Like there's
yeah,
nothing else
absolutely.
behind
Yeah,
it. There's nothing about like, oh, they didn't have faith in the series, they didn't extend it. There's nothing about like, it is literally the strike, and it is literally networks trying to do anything they can to to save money, to save time, to save studio space, to say et cetera, et cetera. It was literally, that is the only impetus behind us not getting 18 episodes this season. And I think everyone is comfortable and happy with there only being the 13 because of the strike.
right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my my wish is completely selfish, just because I want more before
Same.
the summer.
Agreed. Yeah.
Um, but and uh, I love talking about the show. I love talking about it with you. I love designing these posters. So, I just want to do more of that. So, I'm excited, and I think I'm gonna, like I said, I recently watched A Leap for Lisa. I think I'm gonna try and whatever time I have between work and family, and we've got a baby coming in May, but I want to try and do some more Quantum Leap rewatch of the original series, parallel to rewatching this season,
Yeah.
and hopefully, and I want to do some more posters for the original show too. So I'll put that on my.
Well, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity for you and I to chat a little bit and maybe do some some sort of capsule reviews
Yeah,
of the classic series at some
I
point.
hear you have a podcast.
So says my bio for Cry
Right
It Out, playing at the Oil Lamp Theater in Glenview, Illinois.
there, you go. Nice plug.
I
Um,
I did not know. No, you know what? The funny thing is, I literally did not know that they were going to use that like tidbit, so much so that I don't know that I even wrote it into my bio. I don't know that I told anybody except for maybe like an offhand mention, especially because we had a rehearsal shortly after Matt passed, and so I mentioned that was something that had happened the previous week, and was
yeah,
weighing on me or whatever, and kind of talked a little bit about my connection with Matt, and so that was, I think, the only time that I actually mentioned the podcast. And then the funny thing is, it turns out that one of my fellow actors, she was aware of Shakina from her time in New York, and they
oh,
had kind of like sort of circled around one another, and she'd seen Shakina's work before, and that sort of stuff. So it was really kind of funny, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm interviewing her next week actually. But the
small
marketing
world.
team for the theater chose to include that with like the little promotional piece that they sent out with like my photo on it or whatever, is the fact that I host a podcast called
That's awesome.
Face Wide
That's
Wheel.
really cool.
Yeah. So anyway,
And well, I want to ask you more about the show, but I can we could do that off camera. We'll let these people go. We'll let
I
all
think
these.
that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
JJ, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love the chance to chat with you because you're so thoughtful about the show, and you've got such a clear head when it comes to discussing this stuff. which can be hard to find.
Sometimes I feel like Charlie Day in that episode of It's Always Sunny, just like trying to like put all the
right,
pieces together.
yes, but you do it in a way where um, this should be fun.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
this should all be fun, and it's entertainment, and it's entertainment with heart, which is what makes it worth talking about. But it should be fun, and so if it's not fun for you, um, you should think about why that is, and maybe see if you can find some more joy in
Right.
the things, and if not, then I'm sure there are other things that can bring you joy in this world too.
And
Um,
and I will, and I will say briefly that it's okay to step away from the conversations and the dialogue, especially because I see this sometimes because I don't engage in most of it, but I see this sometimes from people that are engaging with some of the toxicity that exists out there, and I know what it can do, and I'm so happy to see people like fighting the good fight, but at the same time, I almost just feel like let the people that want to exude that toxicity create their own little echo chamber, and let's not feed into it at all, and
I
instead we can have
That's
these
my
positive
thought. Yeah,
conversations, right?
right.
And just let that air get sucked out of the room, maybe. But so it's but really, truthfully, what I'm trying to say is it's okay to step away. You don't have to fight every fight. You don't have to, you don't have to stand up for everyone, and it is okay to take that step back and make sure that you are enjoying it and that you are having fun, because you wouldn't be stepping into the ring to have that fight if you didn't love it and you didn't enjoy it. And I just
Right,
want everybody, like JJ said, focus on the joy of it all and have fun with it, because I will certainly say that I read some of that stuff and I do not feel joy and I do not feel happy. But then I get
right,
to sit behind this microphone, and the minute that I turn that camera on, I feel joy and I feel excited, and sometimes it's so frenetic and whatever, but it is. I just want to be able to kind of like push that positivity out about this thing that we love, and foster that environment.
and I think that from my perspective, and even before you and I met, before I came on the podcast, that's your superpower. That's you are very good at doing that and fostering that positivity and that enthusiasm and sort of shooting it out into the world. And so that's one of the things I appreciate about you most, Sam. So thank you for allowing me to ride your positivity waves uh, as they shoot out of you. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, JJ. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna get out of here. Before we do, I just want to say that hey, let's right some wrongs. Look around your community, see if there's something that you can do to help out. Whether it's a food drive, a coat drive, a glove drive. This time of year, that stuff is necessary. Volunteer your time if you're in a position to do so. Certainly donate some money if you can. In the world at large, I will, of course, always, especially right now, especially after everything that I've witnessed this past week, I will absolutely recommend donating to the Trevor Project. The work they do is so incredibly important, and they are just a fantastic organization on every level. And your money goes to supporting a really, really good cause and not just lining anybody's pockets. So you can trust the Trevor Project, and it's a beautiful organization with a beautiful mission, and it means a hell of a lot to me personally. Also, Doctors Without Borders, they are doing heart-wrenching work and doing everything they can to save lives and to speak truth and to really just try to give people the opportunity to live. So Doctors Without Borders is doing incredibly important and just soul-wrenching work, and so any support we can throw them, it's important, and there are two causes that I support. Also, of course, the Epilepsy Foundation UK, which is a cause that was near and dear to Matt Dale's heart. If you can donate, do so. Do it in Matt's name. I would love to just see them be deluged with donations in memory of Matt Dale. That would be lovely. Of course, the GoFundMe is actually still live for his family, so you can even go to there and support Sharon and Zach, which would be lovely. Oh, I miss him so much, JJ. I miss him so much, and especially right now as we careen towards these final two episodes, I just cannot help but think of the conversations that we would be having, and the conversations he would be having with the Quantum Leap podcast as they continue their coverage in his honor, in his memory, and are just putting out exceptional work as well. So make sure you're tuning in to seeing what QLP is doing, and support them as well. I'm so glad that Allison Pregler has rejoined the show and is contributing to the show, because I think she's adding so much. So check out what she and Chris are talking about. Check out what Albie's doing over there, what Hayden's doing over there. They're having guests on, not just guests like involved with the show, but just guest commentators and such, and bringing other people in from the fandom and the community. And it's really lovely. You know, if after all that you do want to support this show, you can definitely head over to the Patreon, patreon.com/fateswidewheel. You'll get access to some awesome behind the scenes videos, exclusive behind the scenes videos with JJ Lendl as he takes us through the creation of his amazing, incredible Quantum Leap posters. I've really enjoyed those. I've learned a lot. I know that patrons are learning a lot. We've had some wonderful comments over there, and we're going to certainly get to answering some of those questions and comments, but we're running a little long on time, so we're not going to do that right now, but next time for sure. So Adrian, don't you worry, we're going to get to it. And additionally, you know, all of that money goes to support the show and keep the show alive, and it pays for the hosting services and the other technical services that I use in order to do all of this. So thank you so much for making this a completely sustainable effort. I really, really, really appreciate it. I'm humbled, and you have my gratitude, genuinely. So thank you so much for that. Also, you can go over to jjlendl.com/FWW shop, and you'll get to see all of the posters and merchandise that JJ has for sale on the Fates Wide Wheel storefront. You can also access that through fateswidewheel.com. There's posters, there's shirts, there's hats, some really, really cool stuff over there. You can find JJ Lendl at JJ Lendl, JJLENDL on the social medias. And of course, you can find me at Fates Wide Wheel. And yeah, you know, ask questions, engage. We will certainly try to get to you. I am so busy lately, as JJ can attest to. JJ is so busy lately.
They are. I mean, like, I'm busy, you're busy. You know, Ben Song's busy. Everybody's busy.
Everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. But you know, in the meantime, what I will say one more time is thank you, JJ. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody who listens when I come on here and doesn't turn it off. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, this was a fun one. I had such a great time, and thank you so much, as usual, for coming on, for everything that you do to contribute to the community and all of your lovely work. It is appreciated by many, including the folks who make this show. So watch Quantum Leap. Send those letters. Let people know how much you love Quantum Leap. Let NBC know how much you love Quantum Leap. Of course, do that. Let's get that season 3 and watch these adventures continue, because there's a lot of stories left to be told. I was told, with no specifics whatsoever, that there is a story that one of the writers really, really, really wants to write, and they think it would be fantastic, and I want it to be written. So keep your eyes. Right. Keep your eyes on the YouTube channel. Like, subscribe. You'll get all of the updates and notifications whenever a new video drops. There's going to be a lot of videos, quite frankly, over the next few weeks. A lot. I literally have 4 different interviews lined up already, with 2 more potentially coming as well. 3 more actually. So there's going to be a lot of stuff, including the solo reviews, including the stuff with JJ and I. So there's going to be a lot of stuff over these next few weeks. That's a way to be updated as soon as a new video drops. And it also helps the channel out as well, and helps to get more eyes on Fates Wide Wheel, which is not a bad thing for us as a community, and it's certainly not a bad thing for Quantum Leap either. If you are joining us because you saw the dedication to Matt Dale and you went down the rabbit hole and you wanted to know more about Matt and you stumbled upon the podcast for that, thank you, and I love you, Matt Dale, first of all, and welcome, and I hope that you're able to enjoy this space and this community, and see kind of just, you know, why we loved Matt and why his books are so special and so essential to all of this. Thank you, NBC, for the article that you produced on the NBC Insider, which was just amazing and wonderful, and also, of course, for the dedication and for all of the people that made that happen. You know, whether it's Martin and Dean and Drew and et cetera, and Deborah and everyone that was involved with seeing to that dedication on 2/11. It was amazing. It was wonderful, and we miss you, Matt. And JJ, thank you for the beautiful piece of tribute art, which has been airing immediately after the podcast video is over, again with Sharon's blessing. So with all of that said, and that was a lot, I am just going to leave you with this. Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, stay safe out there, and remember, always leap responsibly.